On today's show, we continue to look at the roster build of the current Milwaukee Bucks 2023-2024 squad, and we're focused a lot on the guards. But what about the wings? Because a key player from the last couple of seasons is gone. And what does this mean for the responsibility the franchise is putting on the shoulders of Jae Crowder? We're going to talk about Jae Crowder a lot and the wings. And also then I might just talk about national team duties for certain Milwaukee Bucks players. The FIBA World Cup is only a month away. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN, writing solo for today's podcast to get the week started. And we're going to continue to look at some lineups and the roster build of this Milwaukee Bucks team. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On there. And as always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single weekday, particularly through the off season. And right now, you guys watching or listening to the show or driving the content, if you've got ideas or thoughts, take it to YouTube. If you haven't got to YouTube yet, of course, you can tweet at me at Kane Pittman as well. It's still called Twitter for now. But get in contact with the show, because certainly the topics that you all bring up helping me put together some off-season shows. I mentioned from the top, we're about a month away from the FIBA World Cup now, so we'll talk about that a little bit towards the back end of this show. But if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, drop a comment, a like, rate, review, wherever you're listening to the show. It's free to do, and it really does help us. Fun show to wrap up the week at the end of last week, talking about the 2-year anniversary of the Bucks winning the 2021 NBA championship. If you missed that show, go back and listen to me and Frank reminiscing, and hopefully there is another title coming for the Milwaukee Bucks in the near future. But I think one of the guys that we would have liked to see be in the mix to be a part of a championship winning team, unfortunately, is not going to be there. And that's Wesley Matthews, local guy. He's going to Atlanta. He signed a deal there. I don't think it's a big surprise that West wasn't back with the Bucks. We know technically right now there's another roster spot they could use. I think most people expect that it's going to be Thanasis, but Wesley Matthews, even if you are of the opinion that the Bucks need to get younger, they couldn't keep running it back with those same veterans, he's going to leave a hole for this roster, in my opinion, particularly when it comes to defensive-minded wings that you can legitimately put on some of the top-line players in the East, but across the NBA, and trust that they're going to do a decent job. West turns 37 in October. So the fact that he was still a guy that the Bucks really relied on defensively is a little bit alarming. He played 20 minutes per game in the 2 postseason games that he was a part of this year. He had some calf issues right through the year. Overall, he appeared in 52 games, but he was probably in more than one postseason the Bucks player that I trusted defensively in those one-on-one matchups. They got the assignment behind Drew Holiday, and Giannis this year obviously was heavily impacted. We've seen him dominate Jimmy Butler a few years ago. So clearly still Giannis, best defender on the team. But in terms of those wing guys, West was someone that I had real trust in with the postseason. So we understand why when we look at the roster build of the Milwaukee Bucks that perhaps some of these veterans have been pushed out. Because if you're going into the main roster and you've got Chris Livingston, AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., all with main roster spots, then there is going to be a crunch. Particularly if you look at those guys and ask the question whether you think that they are going to be able to help right now. I think that there's going to be opportunities for those guys to play during the regular season. Hopefully, as we've discussed, you hit on one of those guys and they become playable towards the back end of the season. But that's a big ask for a contending team for second-round picks and particularly late second-round picks. But you lose some of the veterans on the roster, which makes me ask the question about Jae Crowder. And what is the expectations that the Milwaukee Bucks have and the confidence they have that Jae Crowder is going to not just be a bit part player for this team, but legitimately someone that you can play 30-plus minutes a night in the postseason, because the roster balance suggests that if things stay the way that they are, that he might have to be that guy. So I've got some lineup numbers that I'm going to get into in just a little bit with Jae Crowder and perhaps talk small ball lineups. And is Crowder one of the guys that fits in that mix? We're going to get to that. But we have focused so much on the guards, and particularly the backup guard position. And is there an upgrade for that fifth starter alongside Grayson Allen? I podcasted last week and asked the idea about the lack of assets that the Bucks have. And I centered the conversation around Colin Sexton because I think as a younger player, 24, 25-year-old, a guy that can really score the ball, it would be an upgrade from that point of view. I think he's got a skill set that the Bucks do need on the roster. There was certainly a lot of feedback I got that he's injury prone, defensive question marks. I get it, but I just don't think that the Bucks are in a position where you're going to have a home run player come in via trade anyway. If you keep in Middleton, Holiday, Giannis, all these players, as we know. So it would be something that would be additive. I think the skill set would help. Maybe you believe Malik Beasley can be that guy in some small fashion, but it does make me think about this Jae Crowder situation and how the Bucks have used assets in the past. So I suggested last week that if the Utah Jazz were happy to trade Colin Sexton, I would probably lean into the idea of saying, I'll trade the 2029 first and get Colin Sexton into this group. You're not losing one of your superstar players. Obviously, there'll be some salary matching stuff that you need to do there, but you're not losing any of your top four guys. You still keep Beauchamp, who, if we talk about Jae Crowder and where he sits in this team, Beauchamp might be the guy in prime position to get minutes in that guard/wing position this year through necessity, particularly during the regular season. And I think we all want to see that. And before we make any determinations of what the future of Marjon Beauchamp can be, I want to see him have a really good run at it this year under Adrian Griffin and see if he is a guy, mostly defensively, that can help this team and, fingers crossed, by the time the postseason rolls around, be a guy in your rotation. So I would trade the first pick ahead of trading Marjon Beauchamp right now if you needed to add in something kind of nice for the Utah Jazz from an asset perspective. So that's where I sit. I understand why people don't necessarily feel that way. I also understand why there's Bucks fans out there that were frustrated with the idea of trading 5 second-round picks for Jae Crowder going back a few months ago. I, again, didn't really care about it too much. We saw the Bucks were able to make a trade on draft night to get into the second round again and draft Andre Jackson Jr. So second-round picks, historically with this Milwaukee Bucks franchise, they've done a pretty good job of being able to accumulate second-round picks and either use them on draft night and get a couple of cracks at the draft, or you can accumulate those draft picks and trade for someone like a Jae Crowder. Now, whether or not that put any pressure on the Bucks to decide that they definitely wanted Crowder back this year, I'm not 100% sure, but the fact that it's only a minimum deal, it was a no-brainer signing anyway. But can Crowder actually be a guy that matters for this team projecting forward into the 2023-24 season? He might need to be. And I'm going to talk about some of the numbers next after I talk about Prize Picks, our sponsor of today's show and longtime friends of the podcast. If you're not aware of how Prize Picks works, you just pick 2 to 6 players, and whether they score above or below their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. Obviously, NBA out of action right now, but baseball for sure, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, Euro basketball when that returns, cricket, the Ashes, controversial overnight if you're a fan of cricket. But Prize Picks is the place to go. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. That's Prize Picks. Locked On Bucks is going to continue to roll on right through the week. As promised, we've got some further details and insight and analysis on Andre Jackson Jr. and Chris Livingston coming up. This week at some point, I'll have some new faces on the podcast and people that know far more about college basketball than I do. So if you're curious about these rookies, what they've done in college basketball from a really closer perspective than what I can give, then make sure you keep it Locked On Bucks this week. And we'll get into the rookies because they are in a position where they might find themselves with some playing time this season. Jae Crowder. let me just ask straight up where the confidence level is from Bucks fans that Jae Crowder can come back and be a real impact player for this team. I'm kind of optimistic that he can be. That's going to surprise everyone that I'm falling on the optimistic side of things, but I just don't think that we ever really know or can understand how different the preparation is for guys that, like Jae Crowder last year, sat out for essentially 3/4 of a season and then came back into the NBA environment, playing for the Bucks when the whips were cracking. The team was managing his minutes because this medical staff does a great job of trying to get guys primed for the postseason, but that didn't allow him time to have chemistry with this team. He didn't end up being really a factor at all in the first round, which was against everything that this trade was about. Jae Crowder was coming in specifically to be an impact player and specifically to be in small ball lineups for this Milwaukee Bucks team, and it just didn't happen. So overall, based on the results last year, and if the Bucks did not bring back Jae Crowder, the trade was a disaster. But with a full offseason, knows the guys, new coach now, which may have been an issue. It didn't seem like Jae Crowder was totally thrilled with the way things played out last year. There has to be a chip on his shoulder. And additionally, he is playing for a minimum deal. So a strong season for Jae Crowder actually puts him in a decent position, still in his early 30-ish stage. So you would think still a few years left in the tank. He's playing for a contract this year, so the motivation is going to be significantly high. You look at what PJ Tucker was able to earn after a significant run with this Bucks team. And I think one of the big questions is Jae Crowder and his ability in the postseason to help the Bucks unlock some defensive lineups. He only played 10 games total and 90 minutes with Giannis last season, 18 games overall for Jae Crowder in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform. Not enough to really make any determination of what he can be. But if you go back and look at, this is per cleaning the glass, his percentage of minutes per position over the last few years. In 2022, 97% of his minutes, and he was a big-time rotation guy with the Suns, a starter. 97% of his minutes came at the 4, and 98% of his minutes came at the 4 a season earlier in 2021 when the Phoenix Suns, bad luck, lost the NBA Finals to the Bucks. So going by that, he has been a guy that can defend up a little bit. I think because the Bucks a lot of the times play a little bit bigger with Brook Lopez on the floor and Giannis obviously soaking up all the minutes at the 4, it does project Jae Crowder to slide down a little bit in the lineup. But clearly the money lineup for this Milwaukee Bucks team, and in a perfect world, it is the small ball lineup with Giannis playing at the 5. We've seen this down the stretch of games. It's not going to be your go-to everyday lineup, particularly in the regular season. But in the postseason, in stretches, maybe you need to go small in the fourth quarter, unlock Giannis at the 5. You can have Giannis, Chris, Drew. And if Jae Crowder is the fourth guy, if he can be that guy that can still have the ability to switch and defend multiple positions, then you put yourself in a nice, flexible position for this Milwaukee Bucks team to have some terrifying defensive lineups. Now, who is the fifth guy? I don't really know. Crowder can shoot from the outside. He actually shot around 40% last year with the Bucks in that very small sample size, but he's highly streaky. But he will take the shot, so he at least commands the defense to care about him. Drew Holiday, we've seen him shoot certainly well in the regular season. Chris Middleton, we know about him. So the fifth guy, when you include Giannis, preferably would be a shooter. But if you're talking about defensive death lineups, if you want to use that cliche, out of the guys on the roster currently, this is assuming that Brook Lopez is on the bench. Historically, it's been a Pat Connaughton type that can come out on the floor. I think for the benefit of where the Bucks, we hope, land with some of these young guys, if it ends up being Marjon Beauchamp in a postseason setting, then you're highly excited about what's probably gone down in the regular season. Or the alternative is that the Bucks do make a trade down the line, and it is someone that is not on the roster currently that can be a scoring option in that small ball lineup. But I just look at Jae Crowder, and if it's not him that is getting these big-time minutes in the postseason defensively, then you are looking at Pat Connaughton, who we all understand had a down year last year. He wasn't able to get healthy, and I think that honestly impacted him. I'm still confident if Pat Connaughton is on this roster through this season, that he has been a guy that the Bucks have been able to trust in the past in fourth quarters and in big-time moments in the game. He had a bad year last year. I'm sure he would be the first to admit that. But just based on the balance of the roster, again, and the young guys being on the main contracts in the 15-man roster, I do look at Jae Crowder as one of the big questions for this Milwaukee Bucks team heading into this season. Is he a guy that you can trust? Is he a guy that is going to be an impact player as your fifth, sixth, maybe sixth man off the bench, but potentially fifth starter? I'm not sure how that works. But either way, based on where the things are right now, Jae Crowder is going to have serious responsibility entering this season. He should have a chip on his shoulder, and I think it's going to be one of the big storylines to watch this year if the Bucks are to unlock anything untapped that we haven't seen in previous years. So give me all your thoughts on Jae Crowder and where you think he fits in this team. Are you confident or are you scared about the idea that he is shaping up to be a major, major player for this team? Coming up next, we're going to talk about the FIBA World Cup, and Greece dropped their preliminary squad. Giannis was in there. What does that mean? We'll talk about it next. So I'm personally very, very excited about the FIBA World Cup. And while we are seeing some big names drop out from other countries, Team USA, not the strongest squad. Nikola Jokic reported today he's not going to be there. There's no big Vic. Wemby's not going to be there for France. Joel Embiid not playing in the FIBA World Cup either. And there are just names dropping out left, right, and center. I've got a little idea that Australia could be on the move, and they could be a chance to definitely get a medal, maybe something a little better than bronze that they got at the Olympics. So I'm excited about what Australia's got. Everyone's playing for Australia. Of course they are, except for Ben Simmons, but he hasn't done it. We don't expect that. But they're going to be loaded with NBA players. But Greece and Team USA, clearly for this podcast, two teams that we'll be following closely. Team Greece dropped their preliminary squad, and if I pull that up right now, Giannis's name, so is Thanasis, and so was Costas. I had someone ask me about this with Giannis, and I'm just tracking the reporting coming out from Greece. It makes no sense that Greece wouldn't include Giannis in the preliminary squad. Totally expected. I assumed that he would be named. They'll give him up until the final weeks and see where he's tracking with that knee. I'm sure the Bucks probably would prefer he didn't play. I'm sure Giannis would prefer that he did play and lead this Greece team that has some pretty serious talent on there as well. We've seen Giannis in recent weeks all over China and talking about chicken feet and all sorts of stuff. Just pure comedy from the man himself. Still wearing that leg sleeve, it looks like, after that minor knee surgery that he had as well. But again, just following the reporting, it seems unlikely that Giannis is going to play in the FIBA World Cup, which is a massive blow for us who wants to watch him play, and certainly our friends watching over in Greece. But we'll continue to track that. And I don't think the idea that he was named in the preliminary squad is too notable. I think it's just standard procedure. As for Team USA, fascinating squad, because we have got used to the last few years being able to watch Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday and Brook Lopez back to the 2019 FIBA World Cup having a pretty prominent role on this team. This year, looking at Bobby Buckets, the mayor of Milwaukee, Bobby Portis, he's in this squad, but I am curious to see what type of role he has on this Team USA squad. Paolo Banchero is on this list, Jaren Jackson Jr., Walker Kessler as well. Some guys that can slide up and play the four a little bit there as well. Mikal Bridges, Brandon Ingram. So they've got some real size, Cam Johnson as well. So they've got some real size on this roster. So we'll wait and see. But it might be the case that Bobby Portis isn't a huge player in this Team USA squad as well. Still cool that he's there. And obviously we're going to cover it all for Locked On Bucks. But we want Bobby in there. We want Bobby starting. But is Team USA a chance to win a medal? They clearly still have as much talent as anyone without perhaps having an absolute superstar on this squad. But I still think they stack up pretty well. If the young guys are motivated and come together, there's still a chance to win a medal. But let us know who you think is going to win the FIBA World Cup. Will you be watching closely? Do you care about this tournament? I care because I'll be working. I'll be covering it. And obviously, we'll have all the news from our Bucks players at the World Cup on Locked On Bucks. But we'll leave it there for today. I just woke up with the Jae Crowder idea on my mind, and I had to talk about it with you all. Continue to keep us posted with what you want us to talk about on the show. Give us your best Bucks small ball lineup. and your confidence level on Jae Crowder being a real impact player on this roster this year, even if he is on a minimum deal. The Bucks were able to get him back, and maybe you just feel a little bit better about the idea of giving up 5 second-round draft picks to get more than a few weeks' service out of Jae Crowder. So it continues to be fascinating conversations around the Bucks roster, lineups, rotation under Adrian Griffin, and a lot of it is unknown, but we're certainly excited. And Marjon Beauchamp, perhaps he's the guy that can get into this rotation as well. All right, we'll leave it there. More Locked On Bucks coming up tomorrow. We appreciate your support as always. Have a good day or night wherever you are in the world, and we'll speak to you all tomorrow.